7. That's an old picture of him, too. Okay, maybe. You're right, I wanted to have it come to terms with. You're right. But it's a personal attack on me. Why did I attack the person?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Chairman Schweikert is delayed on the House floor, so we're going to get started. I want to begin just by thanking Chairman Schweikert for calling today's hearing. This is a really important topic, and for all the staff who did the work to set this hearing up, I'm very, very grateful. And I want to thank the witnesses for testifying before the committee and sharing your expertise on this topic. And after a few remarks from me, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you, and then we'll get started on testimony, which may be interrupted when the chair gets here. I join Chairman Schweikert in recognizing the importance of growing innovation here in the United States, especially as we work to outcompete China. Just this past August, I was pleased to host the chairman for a bipartisan roundtable on innovation in New Hampshire, where he met some of our region's tech leaders, an event that was born out of an exchange that we had during a past JEC hearing. Looking more broadly, we know that federal investments in research and innovation can drive economic growth and lead to breakthrough technologies that we end up using every single day. A recent analysis by the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office found that federal R&D investments can actually lower the deficit over the long run through the increased economic growth that results from these technologies. The internet, GPS, and semiconductors all began with initial federal investment, which the private sector could then build on. In recent years, to help spur private sector innovation, I worked with colleagues on both sides of the aisle on legislation that supports entrepreneurs here at home by allowing U.S. companies to fully deduct R&D investments in the year that they are made. This provision became law last summer, and I know that this support for R&D will only help American businesses continue to innovate. I also look forward to our discussion today on how technologies like AI impact our economy and how we can work together to support the education of young American scientists and entrepreneurs who will generate the ideas that lead to tomorrow's technological breakthroughs. And one of my focuses for the conversation today will be on how we can work together on a bipartisan basis to upskill our workforce, invest in our scientists, and drive American innovation. So again, I'm grateful to the chairman for holding this hearing, and especially grateful to our witnesses for agreeing to testify today. I really look forward to the discussion. And with that, I'm going to move to introduce the witnesses. Mr. Will Reinhart is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. His work focuses on the regulation and economic impacts of artificial intelligence. Mr. Niccolo De Masi is chairman of the board and chief executive officer of IonQ, a technology company developing trapped ion quantum computers and software, which is a mouthful, but I think I get it. Mr. Evan Beard is the founder and chief executive officer of Standard Bots, a U.S.-based company which designs and assembles six-axis programmable robotic arms. And Ms. Ruth Whitaker is the Director of Technology Policy at Third Way, where she leads the organization's efforts in crafting an innovation agenda that balances transformative progress in technology with effective protections against harm and misuse. We will begin witness testimonies with Mr. Reinhart and continue in the order of introductions. Mr. Reinhart, the floor is yours.
Chairman, ranking member, and members of the Joint Committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak today. My name is Will Reinhart, and I'm a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. 3 years ago this month, ChatGPT 3.5 was released. By January, it had nearly 100 million users and became the fastest adopted consumer technology in history. Since then, massive progress has only accelerated. AI models have been trained since then on DNA, on chemistry, materials, and robotics. The frontier is no longer language. AI is a flexible, widely applicable, and capable of reorganizing work. It is likely to be history-defining, and it's also likely to be what economists call a general-purpose technology. Still, history tells us that as technologies take time to diffuse, Factories had to be redesigned around electricity. Farms took decades to reorganize around the tractor. New skills and organizational forms were needed back then and will be needed again with AI. So it's important to keep up with the current research, and there are a lot of bright spots. Across multiple domains, generative AI boosts productivity, especially for lower skilled individuals. In other words, generative AI can be a skill equalizer. In customer support especially, access to AI tools increased average productivity by about 14%. But for novices, this is far higher, at about 30%. Importantly, it also reduced turnover and seems to make people far more happy in their actual jobs. In software development, GitHub Copilot has pushed developers away from administrative work and towards more productive coding tasks. In writing, AI seems to help make tasks quicker and produces higher quality work. In law, it's helped law students complete tasks so much quicker. There's also evidence from the UK that AI can help neurodivergent individuals by reducing cognitive load and improving task organization. At the end of my written testimony, I pulled together a whole bunch of data on this table, though I do apologize because I realized after sending it that it's actually in pretty small font. Still, the central pattern is very clear. Generative AI can help boost skills, but not all the signals are positive. There is evidence that early career workers aged 22 to 25 have seen employment declines, even as the older cohorts in the same industry have seen growth. These declines only seem to be occurring in software development and customer service, two highly exposed AI occupations. I suspect this isn't an issue due to automation, but probably because of hiring frictions. As I explained in a recent op-ed, AI makes it easier for job seekers to apply at scale, but it also makes it easier for employers to post openings. That extra noise makes it harder for everyone, including inexperienced workers, to stand out. So my sense is the labor market isn't collapsing, it's just getting a lot noisier. As you and your colleagues consider ways to respond to these trends, I see the real key risk is fragmentation. The United States already has an extensive regulatory architecture that applies to AI. It includes consumer protection, IP, tort law, civil rights law, product recall authority, and a whole bunch of other agency enforcement actions. These guardrails are already doing important work. But I do, however, worry a bit about the state AI and the patchwork because they could impose enormous compliance costs and effectively hand some of the most restrictive states veto power over innovation. For this, I think that Congress should be thinking about not creating an entirely new AI bureaucracy, but instead clarifying some of the current frameworks to prevent a state-by-state regulatory maze, but also enabling targeted experimentation, pilot programs, sandboxes, and safe harbors in areas like contracting, regulatory compliance, and finance, where AI can unlock clear productivity gains. Generative AI is reshaping how Americans work. The goal for Congress is not to freeze this evolution or to completely overhaul the regulatory state, but to provide clarity, reduce friction, and ensure that innovation can occur in all 50 states. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Damasi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, and Ranking Member Hassan, for this opportunity to discuss the impact of quantum technology on the future of our nation's economic and national security. I am Niccolo Damasi, Chairman and CEO of NYSE-listed IonQ. IonQ's founder created the entire category of quantum computing 30 years ago with a famous empirical demonstration and associated 1995 publication. IonQ has been building ever since and today is based in College Park, Maryland. IonQ is the largest publicly listed quantum company in history by any measure: patents, revenue, PhDs, balance sheet, and market capitalization. I'd like to make three main points this afternoon. First, that IonQ's quantum computers are operating on both sides of the Atlantic and rapidly commercializing globally. Second, that quantum technology is transformational and will become a core economic engine and job creator. And third, that quantum computing is vital to and advances our national security interests, and we must invest to ensure we beat China. Quantum computing is the most profound technological shift of the 21st century and is the final frontier of the computing revolution that began 80 years ago. While classical computers process information in series, quantum computers evaluate solution possibilities in parallel. IonQ will soon be able to solve a wide variety of highly complex problems that would take the most powerful classical computers millions of years to resolve. IonQ quantum computers are already changing approaches to material science, drug discovery, logistics, financial services, supply chain, predictive maintenance, defense and intelligence, and secure communications. We are the fuel of innovation and are poised to positively accelerate every aspect of applied science, as well as amplifying artificial intelligence. IonQ's technology will ultimately save lives by supporting rapid advances in areas such as cancer research and disaster prediction. At IonQ, we're building our 5th generation of machines, which are 260 million times more powerful than our 4th generation. This tremendous speed up in a single generation is a hallmark of IonQ's quantum computing technology, which is inflecting powerfully in the mid-2020s. Partnering with AstraZeneca, Amazon Web Services, and NVIDIA, IonQ announced this past June a 20x speedup in computational drug design. This turns nearly a month of classical computational work into just a day and a half, and was achieved on our 4th generation machine. It won't be long before we can turn a year of classical computational work into just a day. Analysts estimate that by the mid-2030s, the economic impact of quantum technologies will be in the trillions of dollars, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. Governments around the world are investing tens of billions of dollars in national quantum strategies, and the White House has designated quantum a core national R&D priority. Nations moving first as technology leaps forward build long-lasting competitive advantages. IonQ has spent over $4.5 billion thus far building our company and considers itself a key partner for our nation in our race to prevail against the PRC. IonQ quantum computers use vastly less energy and space than classical supercomputers. Simulating our upcoming 256-qubit system fully using a classical GPU is estimated to require 1 billion terawatts of energy. Planet Earth presently only generates 1 terawatt per year. This strategic efficiency attracts investment, as we have demonstrated by raising $3 billion between July and October this year. IonQ is also the only company in history to have created a complete quantum platform that connects quantum computing with quantum networking, quantum cybersecurity, and quantum sensing. Our quantum sensors have created next-generation positioning, navigation, and timing solutions, which allow for next-generation GPS to be 1,000 times more accurate. Our quantum networks allow distributed quantum computing and the unhackable transfer of information. Quantum is no longer speculative. It forms the backbone of the next generation of computing and security infrastructure. The combination of quantum and AI is a once-in-a-century opportunity to accelerate productivity growth, industrial competitiveness, scientific progress, and economic resilience. If we act decisively, we can ensure that our nation leads and the supermajority of value accrues first and foremost in the United States. Thank you for your time, and I kindly look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Beard.
Chairman Schweikert, Ranking Member Hassan, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Evan Beard, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Standard Bots, an American robotics company building AI-powered industrial robots here in the United States. We founded this company after seeing a stark reality. American factories had essentially no American-made industrial robots. Foreign systems, like the Japanese and Europeans, dominated the market, and manufacturers told us that those robots were too expensive, too complex, and still unable to automate enough tasks for manufacturers to remain competitive. In Washington, there's agreement on something fundamental. Rebuilding America's manufacturing strength is essential for economic resilience, national security, and long-term competitiveness. And advanced robotics is a foundational technology, the fastest, most scalable way to rebuild competitively and bring back jobs. If you want an industrial robot that's actually designed and assembled here in the United States, right now we're the only viable option. Our robotic arms operate in factories from small businesses to Fortune 500s like Lockheed Martin, Verizon, and even NASA, automating tasks no one else has been able to automate. Customers tell us bluntly that without our robots, they would shut down lines, close facilities, or lay off workers. When our customers succeed, America succeeds. Our team has worked nights, weekends, and holidays, has really sacrificed to put U.S. robotics back on the map. But our journey also reveals how far American manufacturing has eroded. When we first sourced parts for our robot, and still today, U.S. quotes are 10 times higher than Chinese suppliers. This experience points to our core issue. The United States is not cost competitive in manufacturing today, but we can be with the right plan. Our competitors already have national strategies. America does not have a specific, actionable, and funded plan to lead in advanced manufacturing and robotics. Based on surveys of hundreds of American manufacturers, my written testimony today outlines a practical four-part plan to change that. Our first recommendation is to create a nationwide network of manufacturing excellence centers. Modeled off the MEP program, we believe Congress should fully fund this network. Imagine a place where you can go with all the latest manufacturing equipment, where you can learn how to start a manufacturing business, scale your manufacturing business, or train your people so that our manufacturers can compete on a global scale. Our second recommendation is to establish a national manufacturing loan program. Our manufacturers here in the U.S. are often tight on capital, and if they can't access capital, they can't grow and expand. We need a federal lending program modeled on successful DOE programs that provides low-cost, long-term loans and loan guarantees to help American manufacturers start up, expand, buy advanced equipment, and hire workers. Our third recommendation is about solving the talent shortage that's currently limiting American industry. The U.S. faces a critical shortage of workers trained in robotics, automation, and modern manufacturing, and this threatens efforts to reshore industry. Manufacturing excellence centers that partner with trade schools and community colleges can better align training with real-world needs so that we rebuild the talent pipeline in this country for high-wage industrial careers. Our fourth recommendation is to address the economic inequality between the U.S. and other countries in robotics. If other countries are subsidizing their robots, like China, how do we expect American companies to compete? To ensure a fair playing field for the domestic robotics industry, the U.S. should restrict or tariff Chinese robots. Otherwise, our industry could go the same way as solar. America has the talent, the ingenuity, and the drive to lead the world in making things. But every month we wait, our manufacturing base slips farther behind. Our submitted testimony explores these policy recommendations in more detail. I urge Congress to act with urgency and unity. Make the United States the best place on earth to build again and ensure we lead the next generation of manufacturing and robotics. Thank you. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Whitaker.
Thank you, Ranking Member Hassan and members of the committee. My name is Ruth Whitaker, and I'm the Director of Technology Policy at Third Way, a national think tank that champions moderate policy and political ideas. I appreciate the opportunity today to discuss policies that will support innovation and advance technological discovery. America's tech industry leads the world. Frontier technologies like artificial intelligence and robotics present enormous opportunities to increase economic growth by augmenting human productivity, speeding up research, and allowing us more time for deep thinking and creativity. But our continued leadership in innovation is not guaranteed. We're competing in a global marketplace, and other countries have mobilized in support of their own industries. The federal government has an important role to play in supporting American innovation. First, federal resources should be directed to support early-stage research and development and help small businesses take advantage of technological progress. We were pleased to see reforms to the R&D tax credits, including in the tax bill earlier this year. Those reforms will make it easier for small businesses and startups to innovate and grow. However, more can be done. Congress should work with the IRS and the SBA to ensure that eligible businesses are aware of the changes and how they can take advantage of them. Congress should also support the development of AI specifically by improving access to high-quality data and compute power. Congress should pass the Create AI Act to make NAIR permanent. Second, the federal government must continue to support America's universities and research institutions. These institutions play an important role in the innovation ecosystem. They create a pipeline of talent and ideas for the private sector, and they can focus on research with enormous potential social benefits without worrying about profitability. We're concerned by recent cuts to funding and cancellation of grants for scientific research, which risk dulling our competitive edge. We can't hamstring any stage of innovation, especially when other countries are looking to replace us as the global tech leader. American firms face increasingly sophisticated competition in the global marketplace, particularly from China. The Chinese government has mobilized vast resources in support of its own industry with the goal of becoming the global leader in AI by 2030. American AI is still the best in the world, but Chinese systems do pose a threat. It's critical for our long-term security and economic growth that AI systems developed with American values win in the global market. Just as it's not guaranteed that America will continue to lead when it comes to innovation, it's not guaranteed that the economic growth that comes with innovation will reach everyone in the country. Our third recommendation is that the federal government should take action to ensure that our workforce is resilient enough to adapt to the coming changes. Frontier technologies have the potential to affect every industry and can change the way we work at every level of our career. The policy response should therefore cover a continuum to support workers at every stage. First, we have to understand the landscape. The Department of Labor should collect more data on how employers are adopting AI, how it affects job opportunities, and what skills and backgrounds are most in demand. We also have to start preparing early. Our education system should incorporate AI and other advanced technologies into the curriculum to ensure students are getting the training they need for the future workforce. We should also provide more post-secondary opportunities outside of traditional four-year colleges. We should significantly expand apprenticeships and other credential programs, and we should prioritize their adoption in fast-growing industries to help American workers meet the demand. We should also support retraining and upskilling opportunities for people already in the workforce, because as technology changes, workers' skills will also need to evolve. Finally, we must modernize the safety net. We can be optimistic about technology while acknowledging that disruption is inevitable. The unemployment insurance system needs updating, and other support programs should be easier to access for workers who are hurt or face periods of transition. The government should not stand in the way of technological innovation. Instead, it should focus on areas of maximum impact, supporting scientific research, helping small businesses grow, and supporting workers through any resulting market disruptions. Thank you for holding this hearing today, and I look forward to discussing more opportunities for pro-innovation policies, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thanks so much. What a really good panel. And I'm going to reward Senator McCormick for early on-time
being here on
attendance,
time.
and I'm going to.
Thank you. Parity in the Senate.
I also got to do an opening, so go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to a great panel. Thank you to the ranking member and the chairman, Schweikert, for holding this hearing. Frontier technologies will have a profound effect on the global economy, and the question, of course, facing the United States is whether we'll be a leader that can shape our own destiny or simply be pulled along by a wave of innovation. Mr. Reinhardt, in your testimony, you cited that nearly 10% of U.S. businesses are utilizing artificial intelligence, more than doubled from 2 years ago. As usage increases, the processing power necessary to train and deploy advanced AI applications will increase in kind, and energy demand will intensify. American leadership is incredibly important in AI and dependent on this growth in energy production. Could you discuss how energy dominance is necessary and fits into the overall strategy for America's leadership in AI?
Yeah, I think that most everyone is recognizing that at the end of the day, the real binding constraint for compute, right, the input for AI really will be energy, right? America has an incredible supply of semiconductors. We have the talent, we have data, we have the organization. The real thing that it seems that in the near term we're going to be constrained will be energy usage. I will say, having looked at some of this, the projections are kind of all over the board, to be very honest. I think we need to do a better job. I know the EIA has been doing projections. So fundamentally, it really does come down to energy at the end of the day. Energy and semiconductors, I would say, as the fundamental input for the new AI economy.
Great, thank you. Pittsburgh's a growing destination for innovative companies. We have, of course, Carnegie Mellon there and University of Pittsburgh. Last summer, we hosted this inaugural Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit. And we hosted executives from investment world, AI, hyperscalers, and energy companies. And there was a $92 billion of investment announced in Pennsylvania. But the thing that kept coming up again and again, particularly as we thought about this infrastructure build, was a shortage in skilled labor and the need to ensure that we had the labor necessary to meet this growing demand. Mr. Beard, you underscored this message that I've heard across the Commonwealth about a need for a revitalized U.S. manufacturing base and stronger workforce development programs. Could you speak to the challenge and the opportunity in finding and building skilled labor in the robotics sector and how this is essential to meet the investment demand that we're seeing?
Absolutely. We've heard from hundreds of manufacturing customers, and we've heard across the board that it's very hard to hire for manufacturing today. And this goes from machinists to welders to people who can help assemble. And I think there's a couple things that we can do to really lead here. Part of our proposal in our submitted testimony is to create these centers of manufacturing excellence to really redo the MEP program, to have these amazing centers where you can go and you can see all the latest equipment, you can learn from people who are experts in the field. It's really about putting our heads together as a country, because manufacturing is a bit of a lost art. And I think for a while we thought basic manufacturing wasn't important and we'll just focus on advanced. And the truth is both are very important. And so I think if we have centers where you can go and get trained, and in partnership with community colleges and local universities and trade schools, that we can start to train back. And we're actually having to do that ourselves, to create our own training programs to train robotics experts, because there aren't enough of them in this country right now.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. Mr. DeMasi, could you comment on the investment landscape and projected growth of quantum computing? And in particular, I'm interested in how the United States compares to China and the rest of the world in number of startups, patents granted, capital, and scientific publications. What's the mark to market on where we are relative to the rest of the world, and who's growing or who's accelerating?
Thank you for that question. Well, we're fortunate in this country that the world's largest quantum company is IonQ, and it's obviously based here in College Park. So we've been at it 30 years. We've been building for 30 years. And private capital markets in the United States have, of course, built on some of the start that we got with government support a few decades ago. And private capital tends to find good ideas. And so we have seen a tremendous, of course, interest on both sides of the Atlantic for companies such as IonQ. And I think that there are, I call them slow followers, but there are also RANDs in our sector, of course, who are trying to compete with IonQ in the private markets and are smaller than us and behind us both temporally and by any other measure, unit economics, revenue, et cetera. With China, we've had problems, honestly, with theft. That has impacted us. We have an office in Oxford, England. Our headquarters is here, College Park, Maryland. There have been thumb drives that go into servers at 3 a.m. and people leave the country, kind of thing. So I, of course, ask for your help on that topic, because it's not a symmetric playing field. China has invested heavily in state-sponsored initiatives. We believe that we have a 5-year lead over them presently. IonQ does, but specifically because the U.S., this administration, has supported not just growth in our company, but also combinatory progress. So we acquired a company in Oxford, England, called Oxford Ionics that we announced at the Technology Prosperity deal signing in September, and that was obviously very important for catalyzing success for us. And so I think, look, the strengths in, of course, our system is that it's not top-down. At the same time, it remains very competitive.
Very good. Thank you to the panel.
Thank you. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the ranking member and the chair for holding this really important hearing. So I'm way into manufacturing. Mr. Beard, our state has advanced manufacturing and does very well, at least pre-tariffs. And I want to talk to you about what you were saying about just the training. So one of the things that we have some high schools now that you walk into the high school, their new high school, and there's robotics equipment on the first floor. It's one of the tracks the kids can pick, not in their first year usually, but where they do general classes. But after that, I'm also really into 1-year degrees, 2-year degrees. Just what do you think would work the best here?
I think that those types of programs are really great in engaging our youth early so they can choose a career in robotics and automation. But I think it's beyond just robotics and automation. We need young people to be excited about working in manufacturing again, because industry stats show we need millions of more manufacturing workers over the coming decades. So we really think it's about showing people, first and foremost, getting the latest equipment together so that you can see that actually a manufacturing job today can be safe, can be intellectual. You're programming equipment to, mill apart or to weld something, programming a robot to weld something. Or I think there's a little bit of a misconception on what is it like to work in manufacturing today.
Sometimes that's parents who remember a different era.
Exactly.
When it was dark, dirty, and dangerous,
That's
the
right.
3Ds. And then it's harder to recruit new women and people that might want to work at these places. So some of it is also, I think, on the manufacturing companies to make this a, an atmosphere where people want to work. Like in Minnesota,
Absolutely.
I once was at a manufacturing floor and it was just freezing cold in there. And he said, "Boy, we can't recruit many women here. We're having." I go, "Have you considered it's kind of cold on this floor?" I was up in this thing. It's like there's literally no heat. And he's like, "Oh, no." I said, "Because down the way, I won't say it was another big company. They have a lot of women working there. They have a lot of." So anyway, I put it on Facebook, nice little thing. "Oh, I went here today." Like 10 people wrote in. "Well, my brother used to work there, but it was too cold." And so it did make me think that sort of in the modern world, things that used to be cool are now things that aren't cool. And you have to think about how you're going to recruit people. So I'll turn to you, Ms. Whitaker, about another focus of this hearing, AI. And we want AI, as David Brooks said, isn't going to, and wrote, he said it was hard to write about it because he doesn't know if it's going to lead us to heaven or hell. So we want to have it lead us to heaven, and that means we need some rules of the road. Otherwise, and I think we're seeing some of this, which I'm not going to get into on social media, that it makes Americans think this is bad. And I think putting these rules of the road, which some of the companies have asked for, would be a good idea. Senator Thune and I have a bipartisan bill. I have a bunch of stuff on labeling the videos, but we have a bill that focuses on non-defense uses, putting in some safeguards, putting in some NIST standards, depending on how intrusive the industry is. So could you talk about the need for that if we actually want to advance this industry and keep America in the lead?
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, a lot of people are concerned about AI. It is a new technology and people are a little bit nervous about how powerful it can be. And so I think having some basic rules of the road, particularly when it comes to safety, to guarantee sort of minimum standards for any AI system in the US would go a long way in terms of promoting consumer adoption because it would increase trust in the new technology. And then thinking about American technology in the context of the global market, if we want America's technology to be the best in the world and the one that the rest of the world is adopting, we also want it to be the most safe. That's what's going to guarantee our national security, our economic competitiveness, and that's what's going to make the rest of the world want to invest in American tech as well.
And as we talk about America versus China, which a number of the witnesses mentioned or in their testimony, just how about the investment in research? And especially as we now have this combine coming out of our country of mapping the human genome and AI and the like, I just feel like I head up the Rare Disease Caucus with Senator Wicker. We're on this, and have Mayo Clinic in my state. Okay, I've stopped dropping names, but we're just on this cusp of curing these diseases and doing things, and I just don't think it's the time to move backwards. Could you comment on that?
Absolutely. Definitely agree that America's science and research has been so cutting edge in the past, in part thanks to federal funding. Federal funding in particular really benefits early stage scientific research and sort of basic level scientific research that isn't necessarily profitable, but has applications in a lot of different other areas, which the private sector and other research institutions and other researchers can then build on. So having the foundation of that federal funded research is critical.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And the chairman has nicely ceded his time to me for questions. And I thought there will be some overlap in the questions I have for all of you to some of the questions you've had, but I wanted to drill down on a couple of things a little bit more. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I've worked to support the R&D tax deduction to better back our entrepreneurs here in the United States. And now that companies can fully deduct research and development expenses up front, they have a much larger incentive to invest in innovation. Ms. Whitaker, can you discuss the impact that the federal R&D tax deduction can have on U.S. technological innovation going forward?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for the question. Under the previous system, what we saw was investments in R&D actually decreased by about $12 billion when businesses were forced to amortize that investment over 5 years. And so allowing businesses to immediately recoup those costs means that they have better cash flow on hand to reinvest their business and invest in sort of other areas. It's particularly important for small businesses, and small businesses are often not taking full advantage of that tax credit. So making sure that they're aware of it and making sure that they have the sort of capital on hand to grow is hugely important.
Thank you. Mr. Reinhart, you've discussed the Chinese government's efforts to lead in AI development. if other countries become dependent on Chinese-built AI tools, what types of national security and economic risks does that pose to the United States?
I think this is a really important question and something that is, I think, a very, very tough issue, right? That
Right.
We've seen, especially with American companies, especially OpenAI and Anthropic, talking more extensively about putting open source models out into the ether, right? OpenAI is talking about this currently. They put out kind of an early version of this. I think the real big threat that I see is that currently Chinese models really do lead on these open source models. People and companies, especially in the United States, can then build on top of them. I think that we have seen a lot of interest for American companies to actually do this, to get into the game. So it may take a little while for them to become major players in this, in the open models, the open source space. I don't think it's easy. I don't think there are any real true solutions to any of this. I think there are things that probably should be discussed more with regard to, let me say it like this, that there is opportunity here for American companies to come in and provide strong, reliable systems and open source, and I think that's what we're going to see in the near term.
Thank you. Ms. Whitaker, I wanted to follow up with you on kind of the same point. Can you expand on the point that Mr. Reinhart just made and touch on how our federal government can maintain U.S. AI leadership and at the same time also address the safety risks posed by AI?
Absolutely. I think we've already seen the government's capability to sort of dig under the hood in terms of the most advanced frontier models. Casey has been working with Anthropic and OpenAI to sort of stress test their systems and see what safeguards they have that are working and what more work needs to be done. So that really provides the model for the kind of federal oversight and safety framework that we could implement for any of the most powerful models that we want deployed in the U.S. And I think that would go a long way in both giving the government more sort of transparency into what the capabilities are of these models, and again would go a long way in reassuring consumers and other adopters of the technology that someone is sort of double checking that they're safe.
Yeah. Another question for you, Ms. Whitaker. Rapid AI adoption by large corporations with big investment budgets can put small businesses at a major competitive disadvantage. This could hurt the ability of small businesses to stay afloat and lead to significant job losses in our communities. As businesses increasingly adopt AI, how can we best level the playing field for small businesses?
That's a great question. One of the ways that we can do that is make sure that small businesses are able to fully use and experiment with AI. I think the Create AI Act and creating permanent NAIR, which would give not just good access to training data, but also to compute power for small businesses that are developing AI. But I think there's also opportunities for the Small Business Administration to work with and provide guidance to small businesses about how to adopt AI, because I think it's an important tool to help small businesses scale faster.
Great. And last question for me, again to Ms. Whitaker. As AI becomes more prominent in our economy, it's undoubtedly going to already has led to some job loss, and we've discussed that already today. Can you discuss a little bit more what types of programs could help current workers prepare for changes coming to businesses and employment patterns because of AI? How can we help young people prepare to move into an economy that's more dependent on AI?
Absolutely. I think the most important first step is that we have to actually know what the new economy is going to look like. And so the Department of Labor could do a lot more in terms of actually understanding how employers are adopting AI, which industries are most affected by it, and how it's changing the skills that are demanded. And then the second most important thing that we can do, I think, is to focus on apprenticeships and other sort of on-the-job training opportunities so that workers can scale quickly and keep up with the demand. Investing in education absolutely is important. Investing in four-year universities absolutely is important. But as you mentioned, AI is scaling quickly, and so we want to give workers the tools that they need right now to keep up.
Right, meeting workers where they are, making sure that people we have a system in place that allows people to upskill in real time, I think is going to be critically important. And I have to go, Mr. Chair, but before I do, I want to say I think it was Mr. Beard who talked about the importance of kind of coming up with a MEP model for AI or robotics, right? And MEP has been incredibly important for the New Hampshire manufacturing community. It has faced some funding threats and interruptions during the last year. It's always had a lot of bipartisan support. So I hope as we think about, what programs and models have worked to really let especially small manufacturers get into the game and really build our strengths from the ground up in the United States, it would be a great thing for us to work on together.
Now, do you want to tell them you made me go to New Hampshire to
I
learn
already
about
did. I already did. Biofabrication in Manchester, New Hampshire is happening where we used to produce miles and miles of textiles. So I'll just leave that with all of you and turn it over to the chair.
All right.
Thanks.
Senator Kelly, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You do realize this is the one occasion where I get to be, you call me chairman. The rest of the time, you're my
I'll call you Mr. Chairman anytime. Well, thank you, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. In my AI for America roadmap, I make the case that the companies seeing the greatest upside from an AI boom should help reinvest in the foundations that make their growth possible, which is our workers and our infrastructure. So that's the idea behind this AI Horizon Fund that I proposed in this paper that we released about 6 weeks ago. And that would be to reinvest a small portion of frontier AI profits into job training, apprenticeships, community infrastructure, and building public trust in this technology. So, Ms. Whitaker, how can this kind of fund help ensure that the benefits of AI strengthen communities and help workers and small businesses keep pace with AI advancements rather than just strain resources and displace workers?
Absolutely. I think that it's absolutely correct that resources are needed to sort of help workers upskill and reskill and to sort of fund all the programs that we're looking at. Apprenticeships in particular face pretty significant startup costs, particularly for small businesses. And so if the federal government can support small businesses who are looking to start up those sorts of on-the-job training programs, participate in apprenticeships, that would go a really long way in helping workers meet the demand quickly and be able to transition into the jobs that are growing the fastest.
Would you say that union apprenticeship programs are good examples of ways that how we could approach this?
Absolutely. They're a great model.
And can you point to any examples of successful public-private partnerships that show how the government and industry can work together to ensure that an AI boom delivers real benefits for workers and communities?
I would say there's lots of partnerships with community colleges in particular that are receiving grants to sort of work on exactly the type of training that we're focused on, working with local businesses and large AI developers to make sure that workers are getting the skills that they need.
Well, thank you. Mr. Reinhardt, so we're in a global race with China on AI. They've made it very clear they want to lead the world in AI by 2030. I outlined some foundations we will need to maintain our edge, which is major federal research investment, a deeper AI-skilled workforce, modern infrastructure, access to the compute for universities and small firms, and responsible development and deployment of AI that earns the public's trust. So, Mr. Reinhardt, in your paper on the CHIPS and Science Act, you describe how unique economic conditions pushed chip fabrication and testing overseas, and how Congress responded with significant federal funding to bring more of that capacity back to the United States. So, as we think about AI and advanced compute, what lessons should we take from that experience about the risk of letting critical technology supply chains and infrastructure move overseas if the federal government does not stay engaged?
Yeah, I think that what we did with CHIPS, I think, was incredibly needed. The thing that I would like to see is for us to get that money out sooner. I think the big issue that we need to ensure is that when the programs themselves are, when they are funded and appropriated, that we make sure that companies are getting them quickly, that we get the money out to the people who are needed. And fundamentally, I do see that there are some current, Micron has talked about recently that they're having some delays in their production. They have delays in the factories that they're standing up. Some of that is related, at least seems perhaps, to permitting. Some of it seems to be related to labor and production. So to me, this really looks like a whole of an economy of approach, right? You need a whole bunch of different things that are fitting together. But where I think the government really should be pressing the pedal is just making sure that the money gets out to them as quickly as possible.
Do you feel that this is a winner-take-all kind of scenario, that, some countries' AI systems will be adopted by other countries, and that country winds up, gaining the most?
No, when you look at, for example, Anthropic, right? Anthropic was kind of a laggard. They weren't first to they weren't first like OpenAI was, and yet they are still a massive and important component of people who are writing code. And their models are currently, top notch. So I don't think that necessarily, this is a quickly moving market, and as long as you continue to innovate, which American companies have been doing, as long as you continue to innovate, I think that there is obviously there's not like a single. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a single winner take all, that people are going to figure out which kind of models work for them, right? They're going to start building in house. We'll see some of this, some of the open source models being applied. You'll also see, as I'm well aware of, financial companies, other companies don't want to build their own infrastructure on the back of foreign technology, and so they'll have limitations, and they probably won't do that. So to me, I really just see a fracturing of the entire market. Things are going to get much more complicated. Right. They're going to get much more dedicated. The models are going to get more dedicated, and so that's going to require a lot more attention to each one of the industries themselves.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. The gentlewoman from Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing. It's a very important issue, and I'll be honest with you, my exposure to AI was very limited, and then my young daughter suggested me on some of the projects to use ChatGPT, and I was actually very interested to see how many issues that it can help you, and how many issues is analyzing big sets of garbage data, especially if you talk about fiscal issues, since we talk so much garbage, so it's garbage in, garbage out. So there is a data quality problem in some of the issues, and you really need to do it. So I think it was my interest in observations. But I wanted to ask you a few questions, what is really, and I think I truly believe there is enormous opportunity to improve productivity with AI. And I think there is enormous opportunities, but opportunities come with potential risks. And one of the risks I see that we have more and more larger companies with more resources to be able to utilize a lot of issues. We give more subsidy to larger companies, and smaller businesses struggling more and more. So from your perspective, to compete in these markets, more subsidies were passed, they're accessible only to very few, so we have oligopoly problem in a lot of markets now. So what do you think from your perspective to make markets more competitive and work in AI be more accessible to more, competition? What do you think that maybe Mr. Reinhardt, you can answer for, and then I have a few other questions. What do you think a legal framework that we need to address as Congress? What kind of laws related to data, related to consumer protection, maybe related to some other areas, and what is available that we also have smaller businesses to be able to compete in this market, not only larger businesses with more resources? Maybe Mr. Reinhardt, you can be first.
I think that what's interesting about AI is that it flips some of those normal oligopoly assumptions. That, in fact, what we're seeing is some of these most advanced models are coming from very narrow teams. So as much as I think we should focus specifically, we've talked a little bit about R&D tax credits, how those can be important. But I think fundamentally what's unique about AI is that it really does change the market, and that new players can get in a way that they never have been able to before. So I think that what I would suggest is that a lot of companies need clarity, right? There's, especially in financial spaces, there's kind of uncertainty when it comes to, for example, the definition of AI. There's a whole bunch of little things that probably need to be dealt with to ensure clarity when it comes to the legal frameworks. But fundamentally, I think what's interesting and new and important about AI is that it really does change the dynamics, that small players can get into the market in a very major way, and we've seen this. And I really think that that's what's great and innovative about this new technology.
And then maybe, Mr. Demasi and Bird, maybe you can follow up. You're business people, right? So you tell me, what are your perspectives? Is there some legal framework issue we need to address that makes sure that we have competitive? Because government need to protect your rights to life, liberty, and property. And we haven't done the greatest job doing that. And then you create a framework for competition. This is what you really to do. Now decide winners and losers, who get subsidies, who get credits, who gets all of this. And we give a lot of subsidies, and usually they don't equally, spread. And that's why create more distortion on the market. So I wanted to see if you have some other things. And another question, maybe both of you can mention, how we can make sure that our younger generation, which is really probably much better than we are in some ways, but in some ways is not, because they really rely so much on technology, have a proper skills that AI actually improve productivity, not actually becoming something that replaced and they become not capable to do something. Maybe you can both add something to that.
Sure, I'll take a crack at that. I'm in the quantum computing business, and quantum computing, we should think about as really the final frontier of the computing revolution that's been going for 80 years. We're an applied science company, fundamentally. So I always like to say that we're not focused on helping kids cheat on their homework, right? And so, we're focused on solving unsolvable problems for classical GPUs. And so the great thing about our company and industry is everything we're doing is creating jobs. There are no jobs today applied against problems that take a century to solve with a GPU data center, or take a billion years with a GPU data center. And so every time we advance our machines, we're making these problems accessible, and we're creating new industries. The government, this administration has done a fantastic job of obviously creating an environment for IonQ to flourish. We were a venture-backed company before we were public, and so obviously we're big believers in the free market and price mechanisms that, if you have something compelling, capital flows. To answer your question on education, I'm a physicist originally, and I can remember when I went to Cambridge University how much quantum mechanics was on the curriculum in the 90s versus complete lack of it in prior generations in the 60s and 70s. There's a lot of quantum that has correctly made its way into high schools, even maybe middle schools, and certainly undergraduate courses around the world. And so that free market mechanism is doing a good job of getting people forward-looking in how they're learning and being trained. The last thing I will say is, IonQ in the United States government at all levels, state, federal, local, has a tremendous opportunity to make us the standard effectively that wins. And we need to build the application and software layer. And so I would echo some of Mr. Reinhardt's comments around the depth that needs to come from specific applications, specific verticals. Building those on our quantum computers gives us the greatest opportunity to create value, grow the economy, create jobs, and of course, lead the world.
My time is expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for hosting this hearing. A really important topic, obviously. And Mr. Demasi, Mr. Beard, I represent Orange County, California, Newport Beach, Irvine. Great workforce, a lot of innovation. If you all ever want to relocate, it's a lovely place to live. But just really awed by the innovation that you guys all represent. But obviously, this is creating a lot of challenges moving forward. And I really wanted to just touch a little bit on some of the challenges that this creates vis-a-vis our standing in the world. And the United States, of course, right now is the preeminent economy, preeminent military force in the world. And I guess my first question, I'll direct this to you, Ms. Whitaker. I know you're not a foreign policy person, but do you think that if China or another adversarial nation were to get a significant advantage in AI over the United States, that would undermine or erode or threaten our standing in the world?
Thank you for the question. And I am not a foreign policy expert, but I can talk a little bit about this. So one of the ways that I think about it is that AI is really a dual-use technology, right? There are military and defense uses of AI, but there's also civilian commercial uses. And so when we think about the importance of American leadership in AI, both of those aspects come into play. So it's really important, right, that our adversaries not have significantly more advanced capabilities than we have. It's important that our national defense structure is aware of the capabilities and sort of has the best tech available to keep us safe. But then also when it comes to our long-term competitiveness, it's also important that American tech be the best. In the last decade, tech and tech-related industries have accounted for about 35% of economic growth. And if AI is the technology of the future, then we have to make sure that we are keeping up with the pace to make sure that our economy can continue growing at the same rate.
Thank you for that answer. And I would just note that back when we were in a Cold War with the Soviet Union and other communist countries, the United States spent trillions and trillions of dollars supporting innovation in defense and other areas to try to maintain our status in the world. And right now, it looks like to me that China is the country that is supporting these industries. And I know that we have some folks at the table that don't believe the government should be involved. I would take issue with that. Just looking at the scale of what China is doing right now, they have invested $100 billion, I believe, in this past year on their semiconductor industry alone to try to support a new semiconductor industry to allow for AI. They're investing billions and billions, many billions, into clean energy, nuclear energy, and the grid to support that, understanding that energy is a limiting factor in the growth of AI. And so my understanding is they just added 429 gigawatts of new power capacity last year, which is almost 10 times what the United States added. I think we need to get ahead of the game here. And if we were willing to invest that much money and time and research innovation into the Cold War, I think we need to step up our game when it comes to competing in AI. And so I know that we have some companies doing some fantastic stuff. I just came from a briefing with Google, OpenAI, and Microsoft, but they were just noting China is pushing this out on all fronts. It's a mix of private capital and government supports, and I think we need to get in the game here. And I'm disappointed that the Trump administration is not doing more here, that they're taking clean energy offline right now, which could help add cheap energy to the grid. We've got a lot to do, but I also want to talk a little bit about our workforce because I think this is something that is posing an increasing threat. And Sam Altman actually came to brief a number of us earlier this summer, and his message was very clear. In the past, I'd come to Congress, and I should say I'm a freshman, so this was my first time meeting Sam Altman or being a briefing like this. But he said, in the past, I'd come to Congress and say, AI is coming faster than you think. Today, I'm here to tell you AI is already here, and it's happening more rapidly than you think. And since that time, I have been talking to a lot of parents of kids that I represent who are graduating from college. They're all reporting the same thing. The norm right now is for kids to graduate from college over the last 2 years and not have good jobs, that they're working at Starbucks, they're living with their parents. And these are anecdotes. I know it's not data. But that's starting to show up a little bit in the data. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, we are already seeing very significantly heightened unemployment rates. 4.59% last year, which is much higher than the 3.25% rate we saw a few years ago. And of course, that doesn't reflect underemployment, employment that may not be up to the skills that folks are getting. And I know that the classic economist answer is that AI will create new jobs, that it will, that these will be things that workers can transition to. But I'm also old enough to remember when NAFTA had that same argument. And while we did create new jobs out of trade, I will just say there are millions of workers that were displaced, lost their jobs, many of whom never found equivalent jobs, many of whose families suffered. We saw just an implosion in good parts of the country because of the loss of manufacturing. And the scale and speed at which AI is right now displacing jobs is a deep concern to me. So I guess my last question to you, and I guess I'm running out of time, Ms. Whitaker, do you have any recommendations, just given what we can, what I expect will be a massive displacement in workers in the next few years? When we're talking about 5 years of college students not getting jobs, potentially 10 years, how do we try to transition these people? What can we do to support the workforce in this environment where, admittedly, we're going to be getting a lot of great gains out of it?
Yeah, I think to your point, we need more data to understand what actually is happening. The changes seem to be happening so quickly that students and parents don't even know what they should be focusing on when it comes to kids deciding on what university to go to, what major, or what other types of training programs they should be entering into, whether it be trade schools or community colleges or just joining the workforce. We've also done our own analysis that found that different industries are going to have different levels of exposure to AI. Things like computer engineering, customer service may be more exposed, but other fields like in-home healthcare is going to be less exposed to automation. And so having that type of data to empower particularly young people to make those choices early in their career, I think will be the most important step initially.
Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you. And to my little girl's favorite senator.
That's it. Absolutely. What a beautiful, precious child. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your insights on this topic. We all want to make certain we're building a strong economy or creating the environment so that you all are participating in building a strong economy. So we thank you for your input. Mr. DeMasi, I want to come to you. IonQ, important to us in Tennessee, and we are looking forward to great things there. Tennessee's a great tech state. Chattanooga is becoming a tech hub, and we're thrilled with what we see happening there. And as we look at what is happening with quantum and hybrid applications and building out a quantum network, we like the fact that Chattanooga is building a commercial quantum network that businesses are going to be able to innovate on. And I have, as I'm working on restarting the quantum initiative here in the Senate, what we're doing is looking at a sandbox, and Senator Lujan and I are doing this, which would be a sandbox for near-term applications and being able to turn these around in 18, 24 months. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about why this is important for innovators to have access to this.
Well, thank you, Senator, for your foresight, wisdom, and leadership on so many quantum bills, both at the federal level and, of course, in the great state of Tennessee. We're proud of our partnership with Electric Power Board of Tennessee in Chattanooga. And this is, of course, a bit of the world that led not only in the world's broadest and fastest broadband capacity a decade ago, but is, of course, leading once again with quantum computers and quantum networks connected together. The opportunity, both at a state and federal level, nationwide, is to recognize where the ball is going, where the puck is going. And as you correctly identified, the opportunity for value capture is moving, we believe, at the pace that IonQ is leading the quantum computing, networking, and sensing space to very much be about software and applications and how you capture value in solving problems that can never be solved with classical computers using our quantum computers in partnership with the next generation of effectively software engineers who use that hardware to solve problems in record time that otherwise aren't part of the economy. So we're creating a brand new industry, will drive economic growth at the state and nationwide level, and it's being created effectively from scratch, right? There are currently no people, very few people who are able to build applications on our quantum computers. And using our quantum computers and networks, you not only can perform calculations that will create, pharma progress, financial services progress, supply chain progress, predictive maintenance progress, of course, defense and intelligence, and financial services progress. And ultimately, you can do that and compute with our machines and also transmit that data and keep it unhackable and safe. So this is the industry of the future. This is the industry that matters in the 21st century. We obviously need to continue to reauthorize everything we've depended on, in prior years to get to where we are. I think there's a very, very brave future, not just for the great state of Tennessee, but also for our whole country, if we continue to adopt quantum computing, quantum networking, sensing, and realize that the game has now moved on to specific software applications in every single vertical that matters in every state and nationwide.
And I think that is so important as you look at those applications that are in development. And of course, you all have done some great work with Oak Ridge, which is there in Tennessee. And of course, the Frontier, world's fastest computer, has been there in Oak Ridge, and we have a lot of innovation. And then you mentioned your partnership with Chattanooga. Talk for just a moment about why it is so important to have a partnership with one of our national labs, and then partnerships like you have with EPB in Chattanooga, and partnerships with working on the Gold Dome, and why we have to have these emerging tech leaders step into those partnerships.
Yeah, well, as you're undoubtedly aware, and Undersecretary Gill at the DOE and I were chatting about a week or two ago, you know, 9 out of $10 spent on R&D are coming from the private sector, but that 1 out of 10 is really important for sparking progress, particularly in early stage projects. Our partnership with ORNL, deeply important in advancing both quantum computing and quantum networking in the great state of Tennessee, but also nationwide. And so the right partnership here is really what I think is creating the ecosystem for our success, honestly. And that's true both at the state level and the federal level. When it comes to broader applications, you know, what makes IonQ a very unique company is we have this quantum platform, quantum computing, quantum networking, quantum sensing in all 4 theaters. We're doing this on land with EPB and a quantum network. We're doing this also up in the heavens. And so Golden Dome is completely relevant to the way we see our mission to extend quantum key distribution, quantum security, and quantum computing in all theaters that matter to both the state and, of course, the federal government. And it really is the industry of the future, right? So this is where the jobs are going to be nationwide and at the state level.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all our witnesses. I think I'm on. So 1998, I had just got out of grad school, was overeducated, full of myself, which means I got a job as an energy consultant where I spent lots of time pulling big data sets, trying to find relationships and writing memos for my clients and my bosses, telling them how much more I understood about the energy industry than they do, because that's what smart 26-year-olds do, at least in the economy of 1998. I tell that story only because almost 2 decades later, I was the CEO of an energy company where I wrote a piece of code to pull through a lot of those same data sets that I knew, ran some algorithms to chug through it, find some relationships. It was fascinating. We were able to predict our customers' energy loads better than they could predict their energy loads, and I didn't have to hire some annoying 25-year-old younger version of myself to do that work. And I say that not to overdraw from my own experience. I'm, I think, cautious of not doing that. But at the same time, I remember talking to my head of engineering at the time, and I said, this is weird that I have this amazingly powerful predictive tool, and I don't actually understand what the relationships are. I just know it works. And he said that in his experience, every advance in technology gives us more precision and less knowledge. Welcome to the revolution. I guess, Ms. Whitaker, I want to build on what Congressman Min was asking. When we have advances in technology and labor productivity, we always create more jobs than we destroy. We almost never create jobs for the people whose jobs were destroyed. And I think we always underestimate the political backlash that happens when people who had certain expectations about where their life was going to go all of a sudden don't have those opportunities. Would I be oversimplifying to say that the part of our economy we need to be sensitive to right now are some version of 25-year-old me, young people who collect big data sets, you know, are smart enough to understand that and look for memos, and now I can have an AI bot do that in an hour. So why do I need your help? You know, I mean, I think of finance, of medicine, of engineering. Is that where the dislocations are that we should be not stopping, but being sensitive to?
I think the honest answer is we really don't know. AI is so broadly applicable that it really could touch on people at every stage of their career. The sort of early indications are that the people who are being initially affected are sort of people at the entry level of their career. But we don't know where it's going to go yet. It's in early stages of adoption. And so we really need that data and the sort of macro level insight into how AI is actually changing the workforce.
Okay, I think about, I remember meeting with President Sisi of Egypt a long time ago and talking about the way that their country subsidized oil use. And I said, if you took away these subsidies, your economy would be more efficient. He said, then I'd have large numbers of unemployed young men, and you know what that does to a society. Right? Like, how do we think about that? Second related question, I could go on AI algorithm and say, write a song about 25-year-old me in a Robert Johnson blues style, and it could pull that off pretty quick. I can't go on AI and say invent the blues. So how should we be thinking about how to make sure that as we democratize expertise, we still have an economic incentive to become an expert? You know, who's going to set the new paradigms that future AI is going to be programmed to? Who's going to invent the new music? Who's going to be, you know, the people coming up with new creative, you know, ways to shake the way that we think about the world in a world that's basically looking for trends and existing theories?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that the reality is that human creativity has always existed and will always exist. And I think of AI as a tool that empowers creativity rather than replacing it. To your point, AI is not going to invent the blues, it's not going to invent jazz, right? Those are uniquely human experiences. And AI is really good at certain things, but it's not very good at replicating those uniquely human experiences. And so I think human creativity will always be there.
But I'm thinking as much about creativity as, you know, figuring out that the Earth doesn't revolve around, that the universe doesn't revolve around the Earth. You know, every scientific paradigm was from somebody who said the way we're looking at the data is wrong. I mean, these are big philosophical questions. Let me get even more philosophical, because what the hell, we're here. Every one of the, you know, the big AI CEOs who I've had the privilege to meet with, we end up getting in this conversation that says, you could in theory write your code to comply with every law, but nobody wants an algorithm that refuses to break the law, because all of us know that ethically, sometimes I want to swerve around the yellow line because there's something in the road that's the right thing to do. And yet nobody knows how to code ethics. So how should we be thinking about a tool that is out there, you know, and I know, Mr. Reinhardt, you've been an advocate for saying that, you know, there shouldn't be any regulation of these tools. But if the people who develop these tools are saying, people won't buy it if I make sure that it complies with the law, and frankly, I don't even know how to define an ethical framework, how should we be thinking? Because it feels like the tools are amazingly powerful, I'm not knocking them, but we're letting these tools into the wild where people are falling in love and having sexual relationships with a chatbot. That is really weird, right? And it was an ethical choice to let that thing get into the wild and create some pretty dysfunctional relationships. It was an ethical choice to put, you know, Facebook algorithms out that are encouraging people to join white nationalist hate groups because I've figured out that's a good way to optimize my algorithm to revenue. How do we think about a tool that, according to all of its own founders, we can't program in legal compliance or ethical compliance?
I do think that there's a role for the government here. I don't know that the private sector should just be sort of left to its own devices. There is a role for the government to adopt a safety framework, to understand how these systems are working, and to have sort of basic guidelines for what is and is not appropriate, what sort of capabilities they should and shouldn't have. So I do think that there's a role for the federal government to sort of figure out those ethical contours.
Thank you for helping me earn my dissertation in philosophy.
Now I'm very nervous if we had met the 25-year-old you. Ms. Moore.
Thank you so much, Chairman Schweikert. And I was just ready to yield you some more time, Sean. I was just so fascinated to hear about your 26-year-old life. I was sitting here doing I don't have as many high-level questions to ask, but I was sitting here reminiscing about the conversation I had with my dad in 1963. I was 12 years old. Do the math yourself. And he worked in a factory pouring steel, and he explained to me that robots were going to take his job at some point. And so therefore, that I should never depend on some sweet man to come and do his job, because it wouldn't exist. No sweet man has ever taken care of me, so he was right about that. But I guess I asked the question, I'm starting my questioning out by asking, and I guess maybe, is it Mr. Beard that I'm about to ask the question to? If he knew in 1963 that we were going to have robots pouring steel, why was your company created like not long ago to create that capacity?
Thank you, Congressman.
He had a third grade education. He was functionally illiterate. He knew that.
I think he was ahead of the time, but what's happening lately in robotics is we can now train robots by showing them what to do rather than having to write code. And it's the same type of trend we've seen in self-driving where you don't have to, write an algorithm for if you're 10 feet away from the lane marker, then do this. And if you're this, it's really hard to write code like that. But if you can just show a robot what to do, like with a handheld device, you can perform the task, assemble something.
I guess, Mr. Beard, before my time runs out, I guess I'm leading somewhere with this. And maybe Ms. Whitaker, all of you guys can get involved, because I don't really have a good structure for how I want to talk about this, is that we have seen economic growth be innovative. Electricity, when electricity was invented, it took 40 years for it to overtake the steamboat engine economy. What are we missing with regard to planning so that we're not simply having the AI inputs and it's not necessarily connecting with training and education and opportunities that will prevent workers being totally displaced? And I'll tell you where I'm going with this. We just recently, there was a conference with Mark Zandi, Dr. Zandi, was concerned about the health of our nation's economy. And he warned that in 21 states, including D.C., that they're facing recessionary conditions. And one of the things he pointed out was an overinvestment in AI, and that there is going to be a financial shock and a bubble created by all these innovations and not exactly the place of the society and workforce and technology is not caught up with the usages of that. So we have a K-shaped economy where there's all these investments in AI, but the practical inputs are not there. How do we square that knot? There was and I'll shut up before I ask Ms. Whitaker and Mr. Beard this. There was a recent article in the Washington Post saying that kids aren't learning algebra soon enough, and that'll have an impact on how they will be or will not be able to uptake on the AI. So I'm about to rush home during Thanksgiving with my 8-year-old great-granddaughter, start teaching her algebra, so she can keep up. What's the interface between what all of you are doing and how we ought to be more prepared so that, in 2025, we're not talking about how we didn't know what my dad knew, functionally illiterate person in 1963. Ms. Whitaker.
Yeah, I think your question raises a lot of interesting points. So I think that AI and the sort of rapid emergence of it has revealed a lot of fault lines that existed before. To your point, math and literacy in early education has been going down, right? That was happening likely before AI and probably wasn't caused by it. And in terms of sort of adoption of AI and what it can actually do, we're at a stage now where the rubber's really hitting the road and people are actually implementing it. So to your point about how we can prepare when we don't really know where it's going, I think one of the things that we can do is to support experimentation. And so that includes supporting small businesses who want to figure out how they can use AI in their business and adapt it to their needs. The other thing is to make really significant investments in education, not just when it comes to AI, but really improve our education system.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, please indulge me for a second because Mr. Beard didn't get a chance to answer any of my questions. But I just want to, excuse me for using some street vernacular and cursing. I want to talk a little bit about equity. Just excuse me. Because there are some states that are more at risk than not because of the inequity in placements of these investments in technology. How do we, Mr. Beard, how do we create an opportunity where we don't have winners and loser states? I think there are a lot of so-called red states that are sort of behind the curve in this. Wisconsin is one of the places where we get it, that you need AI to do advanced manufacturing? How do we reduce the inequity that AI is now creating with regard to these investments?
Thank you, Congresswoman, for the question. The plan we submitted to Congress for bringing back manufacturing and for the U.S. being a leader in robotics is to create these centers of excellence in every state where you can come and see the latest equipment, you can get training, you can learn how to start a manufacturing business if you're a young person and want to do that, or how to grow your manufacturing business if you already have one. And we think that this revamp of the MEP program is the way to do that, where every state has a center of excellence. You can go and get trained. We need more manufacturing workers, and young people need to see what does a manufacturing job look like, whether it's this next generation of training robot welders. It's a different job than it was when your father was working in these types of jobs, and young people need to see what these new jobs are like and understand them and have a place to get trained, while businesses can have the workforce that they need, because we have a huge shortage right now of workers.
I could just ask questions all day, but the chairman is so kind, and so I yield back.
Ms. Moore, I'm so excited you're going to go teach algebra.
I'm headed home.
Can I give
8
you
years
a long?
old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I give you a long list of our brothers and sisters we work with? I'd also like you to walk them through some of the math.
Well, the thing is that I've taken algebra a lot of times. I had 3 kids. When they failed, I had to tutor them. So I've had algebra lots of times.
I'm going through it. I have a fourth grader at basis. So, yes, I'm going through it, too. Sorry, you should know we're friends. We do this all the time. All right. One of the great joys of being the chairman, the rest of you can go home. I have several hours of discussion and questions, and so let's have at it. First off, I need to disclose, I have in some ways, at a personal level, a somewhat radically different view than a lot of the discussion on the automation, my absolute fixation on quantum and noise suppression and what my solutions are. AI, Mr. Reinhardt, I've read most of your stuff. I agree with you like 90%. I disagree with you on some of the allocation of taxpayer resources. I wish it had gone to quantum, but we'll discuss that at some point here. But what happens in a society where we have fewer 18-year-olds today than we had 20 years ago? And next year we're going to have fewer. And the year after that we have fewer. And the year after that we have fewer. But there's lots and lots and lots of us with gray hair. Matter of fact, double the number than we had 20 years ago. How do I keep wages growing? How do I keep productivity in the society growing? How do I actually have the cures for afflictions? Because if 5% of our brothers and sisters are over half of healthcare costs, maybe the morality is not spending more money on maintaining people's misery, but curing it. So are we on the cusp of a productivity miracle that allows our brothers and sisters to live better, or are we on the cusp of dystopianism where the jobs that exist disappear? And that's actually, I wish, the discussion and guidance from policymaking. Are we about to get so much better and faster in curing diseases and answering the universe's questions and those things? Or are we about to do what so often happens, where we get so worried about the displacements in society, which are important, that we actually slow down the very thing that could have created the productivity? So that's my universal setup. And it is different than much of the literature out there. And I'm sure it's different than the 25-year-old you. Were you in Illinois at that time?
No, Massachusetts.
Okay. Oh, even better. So can I first go, I was someone who actually did not like the design of the CHIPS Act. I wanted much of the cash to go to actually quantum and noise suppression, is there noise correction, seeing how fast, because my belief is quantum is the disruption of maybe this millennia, and what it can do, what it cannot do. Tell me how close we are. Is my future a quantum that actually operates much slower because I have to do all sorts of correction, or where are we at? Because I actually to my vice chair, I actually went to New Hampshire in August to go see one of the projects they have there where they're trying to actually do, here's our setup and here's actually how we're dealing with noise. Where are you at?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So IonQ has the world's most precise and high-fidelity physical qubits. We have 4 nines of fidelity, 99.99%. That means we don't actually have a lot of errors to correct. And it's one of the reasons why for the last 30 years we've led our industry, and we continue to lead our industry in every milestone you can imagine, from when our machines turned on, 2017, when they went in the public Google, Amazon, Microsoft Cloud, 2020. We've been running applications and selling cloud access and systems the last 5 years, and we've obviously expanded into other branches of the quantum ecosystem. So quantum, from our perspective, is very much now, and it's inflecting right now in the mid-2020s. It's possible to try and build a quantum computer in different ways. Everyone else has a considerable temporal lag to the path that we've been on as we started this category in 1995 with our founder. And everyone else also has a significantly poorer unit economic pathway they're on. So you're going to see much more expensive machines much later than us, right? When I think about job creation and where we are from that perspective, quantum computing, quantum networking, quantum sensing, we've created this industry from scratch, and it's just inflecting. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, we're solving problems that cannot be solved with all the supercomputers in history combined.
Okay, and so is that running operational? So if I go to Mr. Reinhardt and grab one of his buddies and say, okay, I need AI to design my code, and then the question, and I bring you I want to design something on massive, on synthetic genomes. And so the math is computational in today's computers, takes a decade to do some of that math. I can bring it to you. Are you ready to calculate it?
Yeah, as our machines get more powerful, we're taking down more and more of the workflow. Right, so at the moment, as we've demonstrated with NVIDIA, AstraZeneca, Amazon Web Services, we can turn a month of classical computation work on some genome problems, quantum chemistry problems, into a day. Soon it'll be a year of work, and eventually it'll be a century of work into a day. We are, of course, partners with classical AI companies, because at the moment, if there's phones and laptops in the room, these are all classical input devices. So there's classical input devices that then need to call our quantum computers for a portion of the problem. Over time, because of our energy efficiency, we use very little power compared to classical AI. We're not power limited. There'll be a natural drive for people who want to run more problems and more of the problem on our machines, because it's just going to save money and save resources, right? So not only with labs like ORNL are we working on grid optimization and power distribution problems that our quantum computers are uniquely good at, the virtue of running problems on our machines actually helps solve some of the concerns that the committee has had around where the energy future is.
Yeah, look, George Gilder last week actually wrote an editorial about his expectation of a major breakthrough that's coming shortly. So I'm actually on the optimistic side. Okay, Mr. Reinhardt, I come to you and say, you're a believer in free-range AI. How do we actually convince our brothers and sisters of the morality of a whole new types of antibiotics, cures for diseases? Because both of those things are happening from AI right now. And where do you think it goes? Where is, and I'll let you explain the difference. I tried to do this morning on a show, trying to explain the difference between generative chat and a stack that's actually specifically designed to mine a cure for Parkinson's. Help first sort of explain, okay, this could be a little bit scary. This is, our great desire.
Yeah, so generally we split AI into two spaces, right? There's the generative AI side. This is ChatGPT. This is Anthropic. This is Sora. It allows for generation of content, broadly speaking, and that's separate from the kind of predictive analytics and predictive AI that typically drives other sorts of other sorts of applications. The kind of stuff you're talking about, I think some of the best stories are in medicine, right? There are incredible stories. So, for example, my mother had she was on a drug, a cancer drug that the newest generation are going to give people extended life years. And it's those sorts of things that I think people are naturally seeing. So in health in particular, I think there's really huge advances that can be made in health, right? The newest technologies that we're talking about, using foundational models, using models that bring in genomics, that bring in DNA, that bring in a whole bunch of material science, right? Some of these hard problems that we've typically dealt with or tried to deal with can be done much, much quicker. So I think that I've seen some people trying to pull together some of these stories and trying to do compilations of them. Some of my former colleagues have done this as well.
Come to my office. I have binders full of them.
Yeah, and I think that these stories need to be told, and as people do recognize them fundamentally, right, they recognize that these new technologies can help them, that new AI systems are, we have to be attendant to the problems. I'm not going to deny that there aren't problems with AI systems. That's for regulatory bodies, that's for legal systems, that's for courts, that's for laws, right? All of these things are there to ensure that there's safeguards. But at the same time, I think people are naturally seeing as medicine is advancing, as healthcare is advancing, as some financial products are advancing, I think people are naturally seeing that there are benefits to the newest generation of AI systems.
Okay, let's finish this because then I have something for Mr. Baird. I have an article from a year ago of a whole new category of antibiotics that were designed by AI. And the article's actually fairly long, but in there it actually talked to some of the researchers saying they believed it would have taken humans, in the way we had done it in the past, 20 years to actually come up with this protein SNP type of universal antibiotics. And yet, so many of the people outside these walls never understand that much of the misery in our world, if we do this well, and so, okay, there's my upside. Now, an oddball question, particularly in generative, we all read the stories. Wired had one a couple weeks ago about hallucinations in models. How much capacity am I losing? How much inaccuracy losing? And there's a second part to this. I also have an intense concern of the amount of academically reviewed papers that are actually either fraudulent, the data is not true. There's actually a website called, I think, Academic Retraction or those things. Yet those are often the very papers being mined. How much of a problem is that? So I got two of them, hallucinations and the quality of mined data right now to help me create that new antibiotic.
So the hallucination problem is fundamental. It really, truly is fundamental. As models have gotten larger, they have not gotten any better, and we're still seeing this as a very serious problem. I know there have been some discussions of advancements, right, of different ways to basically target the the end result so that you're hitting a better target effectively. This is, I think, going to be just a continual problem. It's just not an easy issue. The data problem, as you mentioned, is also just as difficult. I mean, there's the input side is there's a lot of singular problems on the input side, especially if
that ends up polluting my specialty stack, which
yes.
Enrages me.
So, I mean, a lot of companies are going towards something that's very directed on their own data, right? Sometimes they'll work with RAGs, as they're called, but oftentimes there's just very dedicated data that they're working with. They know is good. This is, again, another issue because oftentimes data, at least on the business side, can have a lot of problems, right? The data collection that exists as far as, bad studies are concerned that's just as much as a problem in the business side as well, right? They think they have better information than they do. So the data problem is just endemic throughout the entire stack. And I think that as people start diving into this and as they start figuring out content moderation methods that go on top of this, right, there's new systems that can try to understand this problem.
If it's something you care about, at some point come talk to me. We've been actually sort of chasing this for about a year, and we have a couple crazy ideas to sort of clean up the incentives to chase to publish, even though if you're publishing something, it isn't true. Mr. Reinhart, when will AI design Mr. Beard's next robot?
I think you should tell me that. I don't know yet.
There are some people working on tools for kind of automating CAD design and electrical engineering. It's a little bit behind, so they're not very prevalent right now. I think we're a few years away from.
Have you started to experiment with the embedded sensors now? So the robot tool actually, at the ends have the new quality of the sensors.
Yeah, and so this is one of the fundamental transformations right now, is that you can actually show a robot what to do. It trains an AI model, and now it can do it autonomously. And the reason it's important is because this allows us to automate so many more things in this country, and we have a real window to bring back manufacturing by being a leader in physical AI.
Okay, beyond manufacturing, one of my crises is, we have 67 million baby boomers. We're going to have a shortage of people able to take care of us. My wife and I, a few years ago, we visited Japan on our own dime. We spent our own money, and we saw their attempt to try to do sort of extreme senior care and automate as much of it possible because they have a labor shortage. There just weren't enough people. Where do you think that goes?
Yeah, I think that it's a really important use case for robotics. It's one that is important to us and that we want to get to. We have folks on our team that have those types of disabilities, including our founding team, and we think that robots have a place to be able to give folks their autonomy back and to be able to be independent. And there's many Americans that struggle with.
Well, you're going the right direction. I was going to give it to Ms. Whitaker, and I will in a sec. But we see from our own data, there's this hunger to age in place. If I can have a wearable, I just recently was experimenting with a Dexcom and the Oura Ring, and just trying to, we have a piece of legislation we've had for years saying if the FDA will approve it, the AI from the data sets, because you're wearing a medical lab on, you should be allowed to prescribe. Now, that seems to really annoy lots of folks, but the fact of the matter is the accuracy of the data is remarkable. If you start to head that direction, have I actually started to break through my shortage of medical practitioners, my ability to age at home, my ability to be much more autonomous as an individual because you can put it behind the privacy chip in your phone and stay safe. And in some ways, I'm going to hop to Ms. Whitaker, and I got to compliment you. You have been, I was listening to your testimony, those things. I appreciate your boldness of often saying when you weren't sure about something. So often, particularly those of us who are elected, if we don't know, we just make it up. But give me the most optimistic use case of making society better with, quantum, breaking the world's mysteries, to AI making it accessible to even the small business, to the robot providing the labor substitution for my shortage of young people. Am I being pathologically optimistic? Remember, I am 63 with a 3-year-old, so there is a problem here.
I think it's a useful exercise, right, to figure out what is the most optimistic case. And I think what's exciting about AI is that in practical terms, as we've seen with robotics and other sort of wearable tech, is that it can be the solution to a lot of the problems that we're thinking about, but it can also be a tool that can help us think through those problems in the first place.
That's actually...
So as we implement AI, as businesses and innovators use AI to help their research, it can help them get to answers faster. Even if the technology itself might not be the answer right now, it can help humans figure out the answer in the future.
Okay. Now the more uncomfortable. Think of the number of barriers that we as policymakers, administrations have done. It's illegal to automate a port. Much of rail, if anyone's playing along, Google's SpaceX engineers autonomous rail car that would be environmentally dramatically better, would deal with backups in the Alameda corridor, other things. And yet we functionally make that type of technology illegal because of our fear of labor displacement and who shows up in our elections. And yet, the actual cost of that forbearance is actually then spread over the rest of society. What are the barriers to look? I have a fixation. We have barrier after barrier after barrier on the healthcare. You know, the AI allowing to diagnose, the AI being allowed to prescribe, and then Lyft dropping it off at your house in 2 hours. If I gave you just a universal question, what are the governmental legal tort barriers that we need to take on to bring the positive things of automation, you know, quantum, you're in your own universe, AI? Is that too ethereal?
No, I'm actually, I would love to send you some of my work. I've been trying to pull all this together, effectively the areas where you've seen all the limitations. You'd mentioned the two crew requirements under rail, right? So, for example, in Western Australia, they have automated long haul trains that, you know, bring basically iron ore from the western part into a port. So I think that there is a lot of areas that we should be looking at to understand. There's lots of different barriers throughout the entirety of the economy. There's occupational licensing. There's a whole bunch of things that I think that we're going to have to very seriously look at in the next couple of years to ensure that innovation, that people are protected, but also that we allow for innovation where it's.
Look, I'm going to step on you, and it's a thought experiment article, and it's a year old. It basically tried to do the economics of what would the economics be in the United States if every car, every truck was automated. And the growth in the economy was remarkable. The number of people that don't end up in hospitals was remarkable. The you know, the ending of accidents was remarkable. It was actually, the authors were arguing that it was the single biggest thing you could do for making the society wealthier. Turns out was the automation of transportation. How do I get the people I work with here to sort of think through that these leaps, these sort of punctuated equilibriums of new levels, you know, and much of that would require you and quantum to make it work?
Sure. Look, you have every right to and should be optimistic. I'm hugely optimistic about the coming years and decades because technology has improved every aspect of lives when you stand back and look over a medium time horizon for the last, you know, century, if not centuries. Trying to prevent computational progress and capturing new value, that doesn't obviously improve economic growth rates, which means it doesn't tend to improve lives. I think that you are correct to identify possible breaks in certain domains. There has to be obviously some consideration of the balance of safety and efficiency when it comes to classical AI and hallucinations. The good news is quantum doesn't hallucinate. It's actually deterministic. So there's a great future coming around the corner from quantum AI where just the algorithm that you ask a quantum computer to run is run. It doesn't try and sideload itself on when you try and turn it off. There's no Skynet, you know, concern. And so I think that 2030 and 2035 will remind you of where we were in 2015 from a philosophical perspective. I think this concept of black box neural networks where you dump in a lot of data and you look at correlations and you say, is that smart? Is that helping us? Yes, it is to some extent. But I think that in the long term, we'll see quantum AI supersede classical AI, and it'll be great for the regulatory regimes that we like to be in, as well as great for the way job creation works, where people like machines to amplify their domain expertise and their efficiency.
If tomorrow we had a widely available quantum chip, how much of these AI centers around the country, these are almost no longer needed?
Well, no. I mean, to start with, sir, you know what we've shown is that our quantum computers can actually help generative adversarial networks learn faster and learn more precisely.
Do I need the same scale of investment? I was trying to find a polite way to say.
Yeah, I think you'll see hybrid workflows in the medium term. In the long term, you'll see, of course, more quantum workflows because less power is required. But you'll see quantum data centers get created probably in the same space.
But dramatically less power, less space, less
with our machines,
cooling.
yes.
You know, so I'm just trying to figure if I have $100 billion being spent on building these, and you show up in 2 years, is this almost a stranded investment?
It's not, sir, humbly, because today your phone, your laptop still has a CPU and a GPU in it, and there'll be a day when you have a CPU, a GPU, and you have cloud access or a QPU, a quantum processing unit, is what we call our machines. And you do see specialization in these, let's just say, investments as well as infrastructures, right? Low latency turnarounds on things like advertising, banner ads. GPUs are great at that. And you've seen a lot of investment in that. We're focused on taking problems that might take a century or even a millennia or a million years or a billion years and turning those into days and we hope hours. We're not focused on the microsecond turnaround times. So the future is bright because you see GPUs growing the total economy on top of CPUs. You'll see our quantum processing units grow the compute space in the economy on top of GPUs and CPUs as well.
Interesting. You and I should have a coffee because I've always seen a replacement of, particularly the GPUs, but
they run alongside each other for a long time, and I think that there will be eventual replacement, but it tends to be slowing down of growth, and it tends to be, the new technology grows really quickly. But we'd love to have a coffee, sir.
No. And okay, and now for robots, and then I'll stop tormenting everyone. But this is one of my only joys I have left in Washington. It's okay. So you're my god of robots. I have lots of articles talking about it's no longer a magnetic motor moving this, but there's actually revolutions coming of new materials, of different ways to create motion and sensors and those things. What do you think your business will look like 5 years, 10 years from now? What will be the models you're going to be producing?
We'd like to be the biggest robotics company in the world, sir, and put American robotics on the map.
But I'm actually almost asking the technology. Is it still going to be a cable pulled by a motor lifting something? Or is it going to be, an organic?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a shift to brushless or permanent magnet synchronous motors, and there are some people working on new motor technologies like axial flux motors, where you can just use a circuit board to create a good part of the motor, which makes it cheaper and more affordable. So we are tracking those technologies. I think that those things help to make robots more affordable and more accessible to American manufacturers, and we're on top of those developments. I think that generally motor technology has not changed much from there's brushed motors, and then we saw brushless motors, and this is another change. And I don't think there would be tremendous fundamental differences there, but I think there's a deep supply chain that is not here in the U.S. right now, like making strain wave gearing. We're not a leader in that anymore, even though it was invented here in Boston. And so I do think there are critical supply chain components in the robotics supply chain that we need to bring back in the U.S. and make sure the U.S. is a leader in, and I hope to see that over the next 5 years.
Okay. Ms. Whitaker, anything else you want to throw at us, because you've been so kind?
Thank you. I think that the biggest takeaway, if I could impart one thing, is that we are really figuring out how AI can be used in practical terms right now. And to your point earlier, disruptions probably will happen, but I think that we have the tools that we need to address those disruptions, and we shouldn't let the fear of that disruption hold us back from all the excellent use cases of AI that we've seen that are possible.
She's about to become my favorite person here. Look, okay, this is the end. If you come to my office, we have a fixation that a combination of AI, synthetic biology, and robotics. And we don't talk about synthetic biology enough, but there are terrifying and miracles happening at this moment in labs around the world. When I have a small binder of purely synthetic human DNA being experimented on, and you start to pucker up a bit on both its opportunities and its ethical implications. But if we get this right, so many of us who are debt phobic and constantly worried about our demographics, maybe there's a way that the fact we have a remarkable shortage of young people, maybe we can make this work. I would argue each of you on this panel have a unique message to tell the elected, the policy class. Get the policies right. Come up with rational guardrails that are flexible, that can learn, because today's policy set of how we want to regulate something will be wrong tomorrow, because there'll be another better, faster way to do it, or a way to go around it, or it'll be done someplace else. Help us, because we can make this another American century if we just get our policy sets correct. Please be prepared. Over the next week, you may get a couple questions in writing, and if you'd be kind enough to respond to those, and they will be made part of the permanent record of this hearing. And Ms. Moore, Marz, thank you for hanging out with me and doing this, and I apologize for our tardiness. It is the chaos of making up for being gone for a month. So thank you, and the hearing's over.
I have to say,
Thank you so much.
I can add, this is, as someone who wanted to be astrophysicist and I became a politician, this is the most enlightened hearings I ever had, and intellectual. So, Mr. Chairman, always, and I appreciate that you've been here. It was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so
Chairman.
much.